I'm just heading out to the bush to film for the other channel, and some of you may know that I've got say goodbye to my wife. Some of you may know that I've got that second channel. Just let me sort that out because I don't think that's quite right where it is there. The second channel, the camping four-wheel driving channel. I'm just going out there, out the bush, to record a review video for that. And I was talking with some of my friends who help monitor the Facebook group for this channel. And we were talking this morning about, one of them had a fellow contact him and ask him about different video apps, different photography apps. And I think he's on an iPhone, this guy. He must be on an iPhone, because he was asking about reflex versus even longer. And I thought, this is becoming a fairly common sort of question that we ask, that we are asked, certainly ones that I'm asked, what's the best photography app and stuff. And I got to thinking, that my personal use of these things is the photography on an iPhone, as an example. Android's a little bit different, because Android has full automatic mode and full manual mode to do what you want to do. It's a bit of a traffic jam on my road. There's a car coming. That's unusual. And my personal take on the whole, what app do you use, is I always use just the camera app on the iPhone. Always just the camera app. And the reason for that is there are much smarter people than I working for Apple in engineering in the camera side of things, and they know what they're doing. They marry that hardware together with the software and end up with a pretty good product. And the same can be said about every phone, every camera on every phone. The people who made it, the people who built the software, designed the software around the hardware, it's always going to be a better situation. However, there are always situations where that may not work to the best of your ability. I think there's a few reasons that people look for different apps on any camera, on the phone cameras. They look for different apps for different reasons. I think one of those reasons is because of people like me. I do a review on an app and people think that's the duck's nuts, I'm going to go buy that. And that's great. I think you've got to be mindful of the creators that you follow and whether or not you just trust them or not. That's up to you. That's purely up to you. On the other channel that I have, there's a lot of talk about people who do gear reviews and they think that they're not being honest because they've got that gear for free. For me personally, it's a different situation to that. I get, like, that's a kick-ass tripod right there. Fantastic tripod. I've done a review on that. By the time this video comes out, it's almost certainly been released already. It's a great tripod. And I review quite a few tripods. But on this other channel, people get stuff, and it doesn't matter how much of a piece of shit that thing is, they'll still talk about how bloody good it is. There's my old boss going down past. He's out there working in the dust and I'm going out the bush to film a video. But what I was saying is that they get gear, and it's from a creator's point of view, it's pretty exciting to get that first bit of kit when that first vendor reaches out and says, hey, we like what you do, would you like to do a video? And it's a pretty bloody cool thing to have happen, I must admit. It kind of makes you feel like you've been verified to an extent. What I do with all of the gear, and I'm sure other creators do this as well, they get the gear. I'm not going to, I don't do, generally speaking, I don't do negative reviews. If the gear or the app is just a bit of shit, I don't I don't do it. I'd rather not do the video than do a video that's bad, that's going to rubbish a product. I don't like that sort of thing. So there's quite a bit of gear there that I have that's just it's no good, and I just won't do a video. So when it comes to the creators that you're following and the apps and the gear that they're reviewing, you just got to trust that person, I guess. And when it comes to the apps, I've looked at so many apps, and some of them I think are just absolute pus, and I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. There are other apps that I think are very good, and there are apps that you use and you tend to gravitate back to those apps every single time. And for me, with photography, it's going to be the camera app on an iPhone, and when that doesn't work, it's usually just for one reason, and that is I want a long exposure photo. And if it's going to be a long exposure photo, my go-to is always even longer. And there's various reasons for that. I don't quite understand when a lot of people want to go and get, I need a manual camera app, I need a manual camera app. But why? There's so many occasions where I think the camera app that comes on the phone would have done that just fine, no problem at all. And I think some of that comes down to having a situation where you may have had a DSLR camera before and you want those manual controls. You might find that you've got an accessory like a lens or something, and it's the lens is jumping between the lenses on the phone or the cameras on the phone, and as a result you need to be able to lock that down. I get that that's a genuine reason for having that. And then the questions that I and others get asked is, which one is the best? And there is no answer to that. There is no, the best for me is not necessarily the best for you. You've got to make that up for yourself. And it comes down a lot to what your particular use case is. And you might have a situation where you are doing a lot of portraiture photography. I am probably not the person to listen to for that. You go and listen to someone else who does that sort of thing with phones. And I think that the reason that so many people ask this question, which one is the best, it's because of this. They don't want to spend the money on multiple apps. And that's fine. Before I go into any of this, every single person's financial situation is different. It's unique to that person. What I tell you to go and buy and what others tell you to go and buy, you may not be able to afford that. That's all cool. But we'll question the cost of a particular app, which generally speaking, if it's a one-off purchase, it might be, say, $5, but you're still using it on a $1,000 phone. To me, I always find that funny. But other times we talk about, don't get me wrong, you might have a less expensive phone. You might have a phone that costs you $500. But we're still arguing about, or we're not arguing, but we're still having a debate in our heads about this thing costing $5 on my $500 phone. And I think it's got to come down to what you want out of it. Like I said before, if you're doing portraiture stuff, go and watch somebody else. If you're doing product photography with your iPhone, go and look at Anil Dave. Go and look at what he does. He does some perspective. Actually, I might do one of those shortly. I've got a thing that just arrived the other day that I've got to do a review on, and it's going to lend itself for product photography really well. So for product photography, stay here. I'll show you how to do it shortly. But I digress, and I do that a bit. I'm just trying this style of video here, just talking to you guys and see if you actually resonate with this a little bit or not. But with the phone stuff, you've got to do what is right for you, and you've got to come back to why are you doing it. And I talk to a lot of people that are trying to make money in this space, and I can tell you now, there are very few people in the world who are making money with phone photography. I guess you could probably bust it down to maybe 3 types of people. You've got people like myself, and I make my money by doing this sort of content, doing tutorials, doing gear reviews, that sort of thing. Man, this road is terrible. Doing the sort of thing that I do. That's one type of person that makes money in the phone photography space. Whether that's through YouTube views, sponsored content, gear reviews, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. You make money in many different ways doing what I do. Then you've got people who do just tutorial, like the education space. And that is things, that are people like, just trying to think of what his business name is called and it escapes me. I'm talking about Mike James. He's got his Smartphone Photography Academy or something like that it's called. And he's making his money in the mobile photography space that way. You've got people like Dale Otherington, who's making some dollars on making accessories for phone photography. But there are very, 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 very few people who are making money by selling prints. So unless you are one of those very small percentage of people who are making money in this space, in which case it shouldn't matter to you because they're a business tool that you buy. All the apps and accessories I'm talking about. But if you are someone who is just out there doing this as a hobby, you've got to find the right tool for you. And if it's the iPhone, well, forget the iPhone for a minute. Let's talk about Android just for a second. You shouldn't need anything now, especially since like the Pixel 8, and it had that's where the manual mode first came to the Pixels, I think. You've got all the automatic modes, which is designed to pull that phone out of your pocket, take that photo of your kid at a birthday party. That's the analogy that I always use when I talk about phone photography, because that's what they were designed to do. What we do here on this channel is pushing them way beyond what they were designed to do. If you don't believe me, go and look at the iPhone 16 Pro and look at how much of a dog's breakfast that is compared to the previous models. Like, they obviously concentrated elsewhere because that thing's a piece of shit. But with Android, you've got the manual mode in there. You've got the automatic mode and you've got the manual mode. This intersection here is a little bit tricky, and I've got to turn off a little bit further down the road there, so I don't want to jump out in front of somebody like these 2 cars coming. So with the Android phones, you've got all of that manual mode and automatic mode, and quite often with many of them you're going to have like a food photography mode or a sports mode, or with the Huawei's you get long exposure stuff. You get everything with those sorts of camera apps, like the camera app that comes with the phone. And it's a rare occasion that you need to go outside of that. I thought there were cows out just there on the road, next to the road, but they're not. It's very rare that you need to go outside of that app, that camera app. In fact, I can't think, besides some long exposure stuff with Android that I've tried, I can't think of another occasion where I've wanted to go outside of the camera app on an Android. But on the iPhone, 99% of what you do is get the iPhone camera app is going to work just fine. For me, it's the long exposure stuff. This is where I tend to go elsewhere. You may be someone who is after that experience to have that manual camera app and the manual controls. And if you are that sort of person who needs that as a photographer, I would argue that you probably shouldn't be an iPhone photographer. You should probably be an Android photographer because they have that sort of thing in there. I've always said the iPhone user is a user and the Android user is the admin of that phone, because you can do so much more manually with that phone. Going to head into here. I was just making sure that it's all open. It is. So I think you understand where I'm coming from here. That for the manual, if you're after a camera on a phone that's going to shoot manually, the iPhone probably isn't for you. There are so many apps out there that it exists for, and you could certainly argue that my ecosystem is Apple, therefore I use an iPhone. And in my head, I kind of struggle with it a little bit of if that's the case, why on earth are you in the Apple space if you want to do things manually? I don't know. What do you think? My gut feeling is that we can do some pretty spectacular things with the iPhone camera app. When we talk about, like, I went through a whole phase of testing many this road is bloody terrible. I've probably said that a few times actually, because the roads around where I live, they just are terrible. We pay an exorbitant amount of money in rates and stuff in our local area, but the roads are just terrible. When you come around the country areas in Australia, in the rural areas, you'll see that most vehicles are four-wheel drive vehicles, and it's not because we want to take the kids to soccer on the weekend or whatever. It's because our roads are just freaking terrible. I went through a phase of trying all different sorts of camera apps for astrophotography. And if you are new here and watching this sort of thing for the first time, listening to this bloke just blithering on for a while, they work differently. So Apple doesn't give all of the information or access to the camera to developers as what it exists for in Apple's space. So what I'm specifically talking about here is the shutter speed. So on the camera app, you can shoot for 30 seconds. And the way that the latest iPhones do this, so prior to the latest iPhones, they used to go in 1, 2, or 3 second sort of shutter speed, and then take a heap of photos for a 30-second photo and put them all together and stack them that way. Now, for a night mode 30-second photo, it's taking 3 10-second photos and pushing them together to what appears to be a 30-second photo. But for the developers, they don't get that. They get 1 to 2 seconds, and that's it. They may even get 3 now, 3 seconds these days. But that's all. So when we talk about shooting astrophotography, which is what we do here, we look at the 3 things that matter for astrophotography, and that is your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. We can't control the aperture on an iPhone, so we control the other 2. We control the ISO and we control the shutter speed. The shutter speed is there with the night mode, and it does it automatically. And the ISO, you can slide your finger up and down there to make it brighter or darker, and that will increase or decrease the ISO. Man, this road! I'm going so slow. If I was going faster, you probably would be able to hear me. Just get down here a little bit. So I was turning off that bit of crappy road right there. Where I'm going is, you probably can't even see it here. Now, I'm looking out the windows on the screen here. I don't think you can see anything. There's a beautiful creek here. I'll show you when I get there. So the developers don't have access to that. They only have access to 1, 2, or 3 seconds. So they can't do what the iPhone camera app can do. in the space that I am in, astrophotography with your phone. And when it comes to all of the apps for doing what I do here, and I've reviewed so many apps, the only reason that we would go further, we would go away from the iPhone camera app, is to do long exposure photography. That is star trails. And it doesn't matter what app is out there, what other app you can throw at me, until they can do what even longer does. And even longer, what I'm talking about here, it's got its own night mode and it does it pretty well. Not as good as the iPhone camera app, but it does it pretty well. But the main thing that it does in the star trails is it removes all of the satellites and planes. For the most part, it does it really, really well. And you end up with super clean, super crisp, sharp star trails. So again, we'll go back a little bit, and it really just depends on your use case. If your use case is, if you're one of the bloody legends watching this channel and your use case is astrophotography on an iPhone, you're going to use the camera app and you're going to use even longer. That's it. There's nothing else really to use. If you're doing other things like maybe landscape photography, which I would still argue that those two apps will do it for you, but maybe not for things like portraiture photography, maybe. Outside of those, it's that's it. It's the iPhone camera app, and it's there we go, the iPhone camera app, and even longer. Other than that, I really don't think you need anything more than those two apps. Let me know what you think. If you're using other apps, or if you'd like me to try another app, I'll be happy to do so and give you my honest opinion for what I do. Anyway, I'm going to go and test this thing. I'll show you around here. I'm going to get this off here. I'm going to get this off easily. Maybe. This will be an amazing video to edit because I'm doing it all in one take. No one will watch it, you watch. So that's the creek I was talking about. How awesome is that? I've got this little water purifier that I was sent, which I've been using a few times now. It looks like it works pretty well. It's basically going to turn this brown cruddy water here into something that's nice and clean. Anyway, let me know what you think about the apps. If you've got other apps that you think I should be checking out, let me know and I will.